Coming up on All About Android, I'm joined by Ron Richards, Florence, Juan Bagnell, and we talk with Brandon Bilinski, who's the product manager for YouTube Music, about the YouTube Music, Google Play Music integration. A lot of interesting stuff in that interview. But also, we talk about the Android 11 beta launch show that's coming up next month. Google is unifying messaging under one person. Oppo Find X2, Flo gives her review of that phone. TCL 10 Pro, Juan gives a first look of that phone, and a whole lot more coming up next on a very special and a little long All About Android. All About Android is brought to you from LastPass Studios. You're focused on security, but are your employees? LastPass can ensure that they are by making access and authentication seamless, whether they're working in the office or remote. Visit lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This episode of All About Android is brought to you by LegalZoom. Take an important step for your family today. Go to LegalZoom.com and get started on a last will, living trust, and more. Or find out how you can speak to an attorney for advice on the right estate plan. And by LastPass. LastPass manages every entry point to your business so you can mitigate risk, whether you're working in the office or remote. No matter where your employees are, LastPass helps you keep peace of mind. Visit lastpass.com/twit to find out how they can help you. And by Mint Mobile. They provide the same premium network coverage you're used to, but at a fraction of the cost because everything is online. Mint Mobile makes it easy to cut your wireless bill down to just $15 a month with their 3-month introductory plan, and get the plan shipped to your door for free at mintmobile.com/Android. Welcome to All About Android, episode 472, recorded on Tuesday, May 12th, 2020, your weekly source for the latest news, hardware, and apps for the Android faithful. I'm Jason Howell.
And I'm Ron Richards.
And I'm Florence Ion.
What is happening? We've got
We're together. We're officially binded.
Joining us today, we have not one, but two awesome guests. Actually, our first guest is joining for the whole show, the return of Juan Bagnell. How's it going, man?
Hey, I'm stoked to join you guys. I've been looking forward to this chat for a while, so I'm really glad to be here.
Love it when Juan joins us. It's always a good time. So
absolutely, and it's a great episode for you to be on, Juan. You are a music lover, as we all are as well, and that is a big reason why we're super excited this week to welcome our next guest. Brandon Bilinski is the product manager for YouTube Music at Google. Hello, Brandon. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you all? Ooh, I get my own Chiron. That's pretty cool.
That's right.
No, hey,
we go all out.
We roll out the red carpet, definitely.
That's right.
They spare no expense.
That's right. Awesome. We have the means, so we do it because we might as well. Brandon, it's great to get you on. You know, fans of the show will attest to the fact that we talk about the Google Play Music and YouTube Music transition quite a bit on this show, just because it's been evolving over the past couple of years. Today, of course, is a pretty big day when it comes to this whole transition. Google announced this morning kind of a migration path for people's uploaded libraries. I know I have tons of music in the cloud and Google Play Music servers. I've been wondering when it's going to transition over, and today is kind of the starting of that migration over to YouTube Music. So I mean, you're gracious to join us. We really appreciate you hopping on. We've got a lot of questions, and very curious to kind of walk through some of this transition with you and see where we were and where we are now, and kind of follow it that way. So thank you for joining us, Brandon. So why don't we start here? Because, I mean, you know, these music services have a storied history. At this point, Google Play Music has been around since 2011. YouTube Music launched, I think it launched back in 2015, and then it had kind of like a revitalization or a change in direction in 2018. When YouTube Music first launched back in 2015, was the idea to integrate these services ultimately? Was it that they were going to live side by side? Like, was what we're experiencing now the plan all along, or did it just kind of emerge that way over time?
Yeah, so to answer this, let's go back in time a little bit. So I joined the Play Music team in 2011. And so I helped launch the first version, which was Music Beta by Google, actually repping my original Music Beta by Google shirt here. And so that was just an upload-only solution. So when YouTube Music launched in 2015, really there were just two music solutions at Google. Music's crucial. It's always been crucial and been in the lifeblood of YouTube. And so, the YouTube side of the house decided that it would be prudent to have a music service there on the YouTube side. Google Play Music was kind of started as the Android music solution. We were really built to be the place you stick your music in the cloud locker, and then you can access it even if you get new Android devices without having to, plug in your phone and transfer. So, at that time, there wasn't a plan to merge the two apps together. It was important to both ecosystems, the Android and the YouTube ecosystem. And so they were kind of running in parallel starting in 2015.
Cool.
So right, and also loyal Google Play Music user here. So if they're running in parallel, then and going on nearly 10 years of Google Play Music, why decide to do this transition or this merge? Was there something within Google Play Music that wasn't working, or was it just rather the YouTube Music brand something Google wanted to invest in more? Basically, how did we get to here at this moment?
Yeah, so back in 2017 was when I kind of found out that at the executive level at Google, there was the decision made to consolidate down to one music experience. It was often the question like, okay, well, we cross auth, right? You sign up for one, you get to use both, but why should you use both? Why do we have two separate teams? We actually, for a time, had two separate partner relation teams that were both talking to the record labels. And so there were two different sets of contracts. It was just a little bit complicated. So we decided to merge the teams together, and then we spent a lot of time deciding, how do we go forward, right? The teams are now one. YouTube and the YouTube Music and Google Play Music teams were combined. And so, we spent a lot of time deciding how to go forward with this, considering we wanted to eventually get to the point where there was only one music app. And really, it came down to the fact that, YouTube is huge. It's the biggest music service in the world. It's crucial for our partners in the partner ecosystem. People are the new artists are getting broken on YouTube all the time. It's a great promotional platform where people are releasing their new music videos to promote an album. And so, again, it all came down to the DNA of music really being in YouTube. And so we decided that, that was going to be the path forward. And so then the last 3 years have really been, how do we get YouTube Music to be a premium audio service? And how do we build a great, easy migration tool so that the GPM users, can seamlessly transfer and find their new home on YouTube Music? And that's what we were so excited to announce today, is that we really do feel like we're ready. Like, YouTube Music is a great premium audio service. It's ready for Play Music users to come over. And, we launched a one-tap to transfer experience that moves all your content over. So it's not just your uploads, it's anything you've added, any of your playlists you've created, your taste profile, etc. With a single tap, you can migrate over.
So I feel like this is a really good time for us to segue a little into some of the questions we had around this changeover to YouTube. YouTube is such a strong brand on its own. And so now to kind of add music to it, it's a bit of a different track than maybe what folks are experiencing with Google Play Music. So this is kind of a two-part question too. How does YouTube Music handle that recommendation engine and discovery when it comes to like new artists or maybe the library you're already listening to? And how do we know if it's distinguished from, is it distinguished from the algorithm that exists already for YouTube viewers?
Yeah, so we're doing a few things. One is when you migrate over, we bring over your Google Play Music history and taste profile. So if you haven't used YouTube Music, your YouTube Music experience post-migration will be heavily influenced by Google Play Music. It'll look, kind of like you never left, right? So I did a migration yesterday for some demos, and the first thing that came over is it knows I like indie rock and hip hop, and so it's recommending me LCD sound system right off the bat. But it's also taking in, signals we have from YouTube because, everyone uses YouTube, right? It's just like, you may have a different music service you use, but you also use YouTube on top of that. Maybe it's to watch videos, live performances, etc. And so we do use some of your YouTube history as well. So, I love the NPR Tiny Desk concert series. And so it knows that I watched, the Taylor Swift performance. It knows that I watched the Anderson .Paak performance, and it uses those as recommendations as well. So we're kind of seamlessly blending these recommendations to give you the right music for what you need.
That's really funny because that actually kind of horrifies me a little bit because I've been I've been so I've got a Google Home in the kitchen, the one with the screen, and
Sure.
we use that as our primary music device. And every time I play a song by The Cure, the second song that plays is a Smiths song because it knows how much I love Britpop and how much I love the Smiths, and so that's really awesome. But I've got 2 little babies at home, and YouTube has been a lifesaver, and I'm really, really fearful that a song by Mr. Rogers will come up immediately after Superchunk or something like that. So
that was definitely my concern too. Is Marie handles a lot of the toddler listening, and she also has her own distinct music playlist, and everything that goes through YouTube. How is that going to affect, or are we going to get some better tools to help us, tech parents, start diversifying some of those algorithms?
A couple good things that we have in place here. We know the device that plays are coming from, and so obviously shared devices like a Nest Home Hub or something like that, we're able to kind of understand better that those plays may be shared. Even if you're not using voice detection to understand who's doing the request, or in case I have a 3-year-old, so I'm often asking for things, so that wouldn't help anyway, right? She doesn't have an account. But we also do a lot of work to kind of isolate children's music from recommendation set. So my house right now, we've been watching Coco, twice a day for like 14 days and listening to that soundtrack in English.
It's a great movie.
It's a great movie, but as an English only speaker, I should not have the entire Spanish soundtrack memorized. But I do. And so, what's great is when you come into the app, most of the recommendations are, they're like device specific. So things I listen to on my Android phone, we make sure we understand that. We also understand context too. So things I listen to, if you turn on location at home, have slightly different weights than things I would listen to on the commute or at the gym or whatever. So again, this is a problem across the board, I think, for just YouTube in general, right? Yeah, if your family's co-watching a bunch of different types of content, how do you separate that out? We are looking into additional tools for that, but we do manage this pretty well, especially on the children's music front.
So I guess with YouTube being such a huge force with music videos, but also with live performances. I mean, I know I've uploaded concert footage that I've done or whatever. Is it making a distinction also in what is live versus what is a record release? If I want to tell it to, play the latest song by a band, will it know that I want the single versus a recording from a festival?
Yeah. So
that's a big one.
You mentioned the 2018 kind of relaunch of YouTube Music, and the biggest focus for that relaunch was making it more of that premium audio product. So really, we do get content delivered from the partners, and that content we treat as official, and that comes in as songs, and so we build out albums. So if you go to an artist detail page in YouTube Music, so go to the Weeknd's page, for example, we have his full discography. We have all of his top songs. We have a section for videos, but we keep that generally separate. If you're asking through Assistant or doing a search, we've done a lot of work to prioritize the premium audio version as long as you're coming through the YouTube Music side of things. And again, a lot of this was just, we do have great content, and we have a huge catalog, and we have amazing live performances and user uploaded things and remixes and lyric videos and all of that. But we know what the official song is, and so we try to get that to users as much as possible, especially in the YouTube Music experience.
Now, I know with my music library and Google Play Music, I mean, I think it's huge. I realize it doesn't hold a candle to some, I've heard from some people that I'm just like, wow, you have that many songs that you've uploaded over the years. That's incredible. And they've come from various sources. They have different tags. They're all over the map. But Google Play Music, for whatever reason, has been able to kind of make sense of it by and large. I know that in Google Play Music, I can go in there and I can edit some of this information. In YouTube Music, I can't seem to find that capability. Do you recommend when we're moving music over that we kind of tidy this stuff up, although with my music library, that's next to impossible to really know that I'm doing that effectively. But if we know that there are to be changes, to some of that stuff to make sure that it's presented properly in YouTube Music, is that something we do in Google Play Music beforehand? Are those tools coming to YouTube Music at some point so that we can get in there and edit that way as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in general, you're correct. We launched uploads into YouTube Music about 2 months ago. So you're able to go to the web player and upload up to 100,000 songs. Which is great. So it's as large. It's actually twice as large as what we allowed on the Play Music side of things. We did not build the metadata editor was only ever live on the Play Music web side of things. We have not launched that yet in YouTube Music, and we don't have any updates on that right now. But we generally encourage people, if you need to clean up before you migrate or clean up before you upload. We are kind of deferential to the metadata you had before you uploaded or before you migrated over. Again, a lot of this is we're launching the migration now. We really want to see how many of our upload users bring their content over, what their top feature requests are, understand that, and then use that to kind of prioritize these additional features. A lot of users uploaded their collection and cleaned it up years ago. And so we want to make sure they have a good home for it, and then we'll look into adding these kind of features later.
I'm one of those users, and I'm guessing that a lot of us are also as well. Like I see Juan nodding. I get the feeling I need to make sure all my genres were correct and all that sort of stuff. But
I have my music library in the cloud in triplicate on different services. Yeah, exactly. So I need to maintain.
Well, that's a great kind of point about the migration process with the news today. I mean, this all kind of started with we got notified that the migration process was kind of opening, and you guys were talking more about it. So basically, how does that work? Who's going to get it? When is it happening? And how do I know? Because to be honest, I've been opening up YouTube Music every couple of days, waiting for that moment that I would see my library. And so, I know I'm super excited because I'm very nervous about this transition. So how does it all work?
Yeah, sure. I've been probably refreshed 10 times during this interview, by the way. But anyways, go.
we can talk. We can talk about hooking you up with the early access. So, essentially, we announced today and announced the start of the rollout. Much like any other large scale rollout, we are going to do this in a controlled fashion. We're starting with a few countries first to test it out and make sure there are no kinks when we have massive migration. We had a really good internal test. And so, we feel pretty confident, but obviously going to a much, much larger audience is, you just have to be careful. So over the next couple of weeks, it should become available to everyone. And so we're doing this, we have a number of levers, we can turn on the ability to migrate. So if you go to the transfer page, so right now, if you go to music.youtube.com/transfer, if you're eligible, you'll see it. If not, it'll say transfer coming soon. Eventually, everyone will be able to hit that page and do a transfer. And then what we'll be ramping up is the sort of in-product notifications about this. So we'll be telling Google Play Music users, hey, now's the time you can start your transfer process. If you've already moved over to YouTube Music, as in that's your primary app, but you have Google Play Music content, you'll get notifications inside of YouTube Music saying you can bring that content over. One thing just to address, we are not automatically doing this. We want to be conscious too. Some people may be like, you know what, I'm done with that messy old library. I don't want to migrate it over. We are requiring you to actually hit that transfer button before you to get your content over.
Okay, so what about, and this is on all of our minds because all of us here, it's one of the tools of the trade. What about podcasts? I know normally it doesn't get lumped in with music, but because, there are other apps out there that do have podcasts integrated into sort of the overall music availability, what's going to happen on that end from Google's end? And are we going to see any of that integrated into YouTube Music? Do we have to start worrying about this as podcasters?
Yeah, so there's a couple interesting things. We actually launched podcasts in Google Play Music a few years back. It was only ever in a couple of countries, US and Canada primarily, and on Android and web. And so Google Play Music users in those countries on those clients have been able to subscribe to playlists, subscribe to podcasts, listen to podcasts, et cetera. What we're also launching as of today is the ability to migrate that into the Google Podcast app. So I'm not sure how familiar you all are with the Google Podcast app. They had a major relaunch recently. They're now available on multiple clients, including the web. So what we're doing is for the Google Play Music users who had podcasts or had been listening in Play Music, we're migrating their subscriptions and their listen history over to Google Podcasts. So, if you follow the daily and you've listened to the last 100 episodes of that, we make sure we transfer that listen history over. Right now, we have no plans for podcasts in YouTube Music. Again, the Google Podcast effort is kind of Google's official podcast solution at the moment, and so that's where we're shifting that content for those users.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. So let's see here. So how do I put this delicately? I like Ron, have been very nervous about this transition, primarily because, and I think a lot of people fall into this category. I've seen a lot of it on the internet, and it just in general in technology, change is hard, right? And I hate that I fall into that category because I like to embrace change in my life. But when I've used an app like Google Play Music since 2011, literally since day one, got in there on the, what was it, $7.99 train from Google I/O and have ridden it all the way to here, it makes me a little nervous to think about changing to something that's very different. And I know I'm not alone. What do you say to people who are in this position who have in some ways kind of made up their mind that boy it's not going to be good enough for me, and I'm really, really worried? What would you say to someone in my position, in their position, to kind of help them to kind of give this an actual shot, to really give it a true shot? What would you say?
Yeah, so I am of course I'm biased in a number of different ways, but I as much as I wish I could make folks realize, I helped build Google Play Music from the start. I had my entire MP3 collection up there. I started using that subscription service and had years of listen history on it. I got to believe that I was one of the most resistant to change of anyone. Honestly, I really have not opened Google Play Music as a personal user this year, since we really built those migration tools internally, starting at the beginning of this year. We've just reached kind of the feature parity of nearly everything that are our kind of standard user experiences on Google Play Music. There's a bunch of great new stuff on YouTube Music. I mean, this is the hard thing. I think people may have dived in 4 years ago when it was kind of a music lens over YouTube. Right. Maybe they picked it up 2 years ago when we launched the official, the more official premium music service version of it. But we were missing some of the features they expected. I really think folks should, for one, we want everyone to hit migrate, and we're going to give people plenty of time to play with the two apps and get used to it. But I think there's really a lot to love post migration. All your stuff is there. We've added lyrics, which was years of being our top feature request on Google Play Music. We let you seamlessly switch between songs and videos. We let you build off of the corpus you expect from a premium music service, plus the really broad corpus of YouTube. We've got all the thousands of amazing program playlists. Our offline experience is great. Our search is super smart. I mean, and the development speed is just on fire right now. In the last 2 weeks, we launched lyrics. We launched a new playback page. We launched this new explore section that lets you kind of browse the full catalog of music that we have. We launched a new library model that'll make Google Play Music users feel more at home with the way the library works. And so, it's just the pace has been really exciting. And it used to be can we get to feature parity? And now I feel like we're just launching things that Google Play Music users have been asking for. And so we're really excited that we're at that point in time.
I think that's a really great point that you mentioned, because I know I fall into that category, right? Every step of the way, there's an update to YouTube Music. And I mean, especially being that we do what we do here, I feel it's imperative, to check it out and everything. And I go in there and I make up my mind after however long I spend with it, now I know how I feel about this. But when you're talking about feature parity, really at the end of the day, that's that's kind of the holy grail as far as taking the features that people loved out of Google Play Music and bring it over to YouTube Music. There's not a whole lot to complain about there as far as lack of features. It's just kind of the approach and the aesthetic is different, and so in some ways the kind of the reliance on or the emphasis around recommendation engines is definitely a little bit different in YouTube Music. So it's kind of getting used to that. Juan, I don't want to talk over you. I want to give you the opportunity to jump in here too, because you're a music lover. Do you have any questions? Like, what are your thoughts right now?
Actually, I mean, this one's coming straight out of my little crew of Discord geeks. Because we're looking at a change of focus. We've got a music app. We had two music apps, one with a Google label on it and one with a YouTube label on it. And I think everyone's looking for the meaning there. What does this mean? What does this mean if this is going to be a YouTube team project versus a Google branded project? And I was hoping you could comment on some of the internal collaboration, because from what you just said, we've been excitedly watching some of the feature parity, some of these updates, some of these improvements to the YouTube side. What does this mean for some of the collaboration with some of the hardware divisions? If someone was really invested in Google Play Music and had an Android watch, what does this mean for YouTube Music and future apps and applets that kind of coordinate with all of that ecosystem? I feel like that's one of the things. It's simply a name that's making some people nervous about, well, what about some of these features, and will it work with this product? And can I expect my home or my Nest products to tie into this? I'm sure that's got to be a very heady challenge with an organization as large as Alphabet and all these parts that are kind of moving between these different teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think the merger 3 years ago of the two teams, what was great about that is both internally and externally, Sundar kind of leveled this message that this new team is the music solution across Google and YouTube, and Nest, and whoever else comes along. And so we do have the brand, right? Because we share an infrastructure, we share content with YouTube. I mean, YouTube is the brand for music. It's the brand for artists. It's definitely a media brand here. But last year in November, we became the default app for all Android OSs, YouTube Music, that is. So if you buy a new Android phone this year, it ships with YouTube Music by default, right? Having YouTube Music as the default music player, and so we can actually play local MP3s on the Android side. So we've added a lot of that functionality that Google Play Music had in service of being a great Android partner. Smart speakers, we launched a free tier that worked on smart speakers last year for YouTube Music. We have some great integrations with the Home Hub, the screen speaker experiences. We've been working closely with the Pixel team. We have an entire division in the YouTube Music team that's focused on making sure, we're a good partner across all of Google. So, of course, the branding, it's like, oh, well, this was called Google, right? So, of course, they work better with Google. But the way we see it internally is YouTube Music is the music solution for Google and YouTube. And so all of the focus, comes back to us. And it's really been helpful, right? In the past, the Pixel team had to decide, well, will this integration work with Google Play Music by default? Will it work with YouTube Music by default? And that's what we were trying to clean up here.
Cool. So I guess I got a more tactical question, especially for us Google Play Music loyalists. So I guess in terms as we move forward, so what happens to the people who are still paying the $7.99 a month for Google Play Music? And then ultimately, when do we have to say goodbye to Google Play Music? Do you guys have an expected end of life date for the app, or?
Great. One softball, very easy one, and then one that we can talk about a little more detail. So one thing with migration that I didn't mention is we're also migrating your billing experience. So whatever you are paying, whatever tier of service you had, that's being migrated over. So for the old folks like myself, who are on that $7.99 deal for that intro pricing offer that we had in Google Play Music, you'll continue to pay for that. If you are getting cross-authenticated to the full YouTube Premium experience, you'll continue to get that at your same rate. The only thing that changes is, when you get a receipt or a bill on your credit card statement, it'll come from YouTube rather than from Google Play. So that's easy, right? We just wanted to also make that simple and have no fear that you're going to lose out on the great deals you may have gotten in the past. As far as the shutdown timing, we've been saying later this year. We'll make another announcement as the year goes on when we have a more concrete date on that. The big thing to stress here is our focus is giving users plenty of time to migrate their content and get used to the new app. So, again, that's coming into play as we decide a date. So, again, we're targeting later this year, but we don't have any specific date to announce.
We like to play. We play the funeral music whenever we say goodbye to a Google app. We kind of make a big deal out of it here. So we just
I have to tell you, we've been discussing internally, should we float a boat full of Google Play Music paraphernalia out into the bay and shoot a flaming arrow into it? How should we really sunset the end? So again, it's super bittersweet because as a product I've been around on for a very long time. But the sweet part is that we're really excited about the new app, and we feel like we've really done the right thing by our users in this experience, which it's hard. It's hard. Google has deprecated many things in the past and will continue to in the future. And we just wanted to make it the best possible experience we could for users.
Yeah, and I guess and 10 years or close to 10 years is that's an amazing accomplishment, and especially in this landscape of streaming services, where the question, I know for me it was I choose Google Play Music over Spotify, for the past 10, however many years. It kind of boils down to that, and so I guess the question is that I know I've been particularly critical of this change because I love my Google Play Music and I got everything set and worried about getting remixes and bad kind of content in there. But I talked about it on the show a while back. I'm not going to go to Spotify. That ship has already sailed for me. So it's definitely give YouTube Music a shot and then see what and then see how it works out, I guess.
Yeah, we have to treat this experience like it's it is another decision point for users where they may say look, I've been happy on Google Play Music, but now you're forcing me to move. So people are asking us why shouldn't I go now consider some other services? And so one, your own personal content, I just can't stress enough how important that is. And even what I feel like when I use Google Play Music a lot in the past, and then I would go and play with YouTube Music, even ignoring all of the differences in the apps and the changes, not seeing the playlist that you've been, listening to for years. I have 1,200 like songs, and it's just so common for me to go in the app and just hit shuffle on my like songs. And having to build up that from scratch, is hard. And so I really feel like once people start seeing the content that they've spent a lot of time, curating, building in another app, it really helps them feel it's like when you move into a new apartment or whatever, right? Hanging some pictures on your wall makes you feel like you're starting to be at home. And that's kind of what this migration experience is meant to do.
Yeah. And I think also I might add the passion around this topic is a testament to the fan base that has built around these products. And so, that just because people are, have kind of a tendency in some cases to approach this from kind of a negative viewpoint, it's just because we care so much about these products. You know what I mean? Google Play Music has been in my life for 10 years. It's been a really big deal. So we want it to work. We want it to make us happy the way that Google Play Music has.
Yeah. And anecdotally, I just love working on a music product. It's the best, it's the best job ever. I'm just super passionate about music. It's awesome to kind of be in and involved in it this much. But throughout Google Play Music's history, it was constantly just users asking for more features. They wanted something to behave in their personal way. Everyone has their own personal experience with a music app. And so, it's funny now that we're you have to transfer. People are no, Google Play Music was perfect. And I'm I'm pretty sure you were the one, asking for extra features a few years ago. So, I think that we're always just striving to make sure that we're giving users the best experience we can. And give people features if they need them and not make things too complicated. But again, people are passionate about music, right? And so they're passionate about the service it plays on. And so that's just something that's always been true.
Absolutely true. Brandon Bilinski, product manager for YouTube Music. Brandon, thank you so much for carving out some time on a Tuesday night to join us from your home.
Great, yeah,
we're all podcasting from our homes at this point, so thank you for doing that with us.
Yeah, awesome.
Really appreciate
I'm happy to chat with you all, and let me know if you have any questions or anything that comes up from your viewers, listeners later. I'm happy to help answer them.
Well, we're anxiously awaiting. We're anxiously awaiting the transfer. So once we do that, tune in next week. Hopefully by then we yeah.
If you want to send that to 4 Android accounts right now, then
okay, yeah. Let me talk to our whitelister and see what I can do.
Right on, Brandon. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks,
we'll talk to you soon. Best of luck with this.
Well, huge thanks to Brandon Bilinski from YouTube Music for coming on the show. That was awesome. And now we're going to take a quick break to thank a sponsor and thank the sponsor of this episode, LegalZoom. Health and safety is on top of everyone's mind right now. No matter what happens, you want to make sure your loved ones are protected. And that's why LegalZoom continues to provide a reliable way for everyone to set up the right estate plan without leaving your home. I've got a family now. It's all of a sudden, in the lifespan of all but Android, I didn't have a family, and now I got a family, and I got to take care of them. And I'm going to go to LegalZoom to help me figure out how to set up the estate plan and last will testament and all that fun stuff to make sure that my wife and kids are taken care of, and God forbid anything ever happens to me. And it's really intimidating, but luckily LegalZoom makes it easier for you. And it starts with finding the answers to your questions, like, do you need a last will and testament or a living trust? What about an advanced healthcare directive? And what is a power of attorney? Thankfully, you don't have to figure everything out on your own. LegalZoom's online resources make it easy to get started. And if you need to speak to an attorney, their independent attorney network is there to guide you and advise you. LegalZoom isn't a law firm, so you won't have to worry about expensive billable hours adding up. So take an important step for your family today. Go to LegalZoom.com and get started on a last will, living trust, and more. Or find out how you can speak to an attorney for advice on the right estate plan. LegalZoom, where life meets legal. Thanks, LegalZoom. And now we're going to go into some news. We're going to go some news, right, Jason? Is that the plan?
Yeah, let's do the news now. It's now news with Burke.
Now news with Burke.
There we go. Because the music wasn't there, and that's okay. Okay.
Did you guys know, by the way, Kurt Loder is 70 years old?
75.
75. Whoa.
Holy cow.
Also, and I take umbrage to that entire thing because everyone's like, you want to get your mind blown. MTV VJ Kurt Loder 75. He was never a VJ. He was a news correspondent.
True.
He was a journalist. So,
True.
Well corrected.
Yes.
However, at the time, I never thought of Kurt Loder as being the same age as my dad. But now I do.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
crazy.
I guess they were the same age. Interesting. Kurt Loder was a lot hipper, I would say, just because he was on YouTube. Anyways, Android 11. Google announced a delay to its beta release schedule. They announced this last week, Wednesday, said that they're releasing Developer Preview 4 on Wednesday, which they did. They've moved Beta 1 to release on June 3rd, so a month later. They've also, by the way, scheduled an event for June 3rd called the Beta Launch Show. So we had wondered when Google I/O, pour one out for Google I/O this year, when it went away due to the coronavirus delays and everything, if there was going to be any sort of virtual event. And Google really, I thought Google said there wasn't going to be, or they basically said we're canceling I/O. It's not going to be a virtual I/O.
There was no I/O event, but it doesn't mean there wouldn't be an Android 11 event.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is, so they're doing this Android 11 event, the beta launch show. Like I said, it's a live hour-long live stream. It's hosted by Dave Burke and Steph Cuthbertson, both friends of the show. 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, June 3rd. We will be covering this for Twit. So actually, Ron, Flo, and I will be on set to do live coverage of this that morning. So if you got nothing else to do, or if you do, cancel those plans and join us and watch.
I have to say, they should have just called us, by the way, to just talk to us again. I mean,
right? Good idea. I mean, after breaking all that YouTube music news, it just makes sense for us to then break the Android 11 news.
We have the infrastructure. See,
with me as a special guest, this is the perfect plan. I don't see why they wouldn't do that.
I mean, it's right there. It's right there in the title. It's all about Android. Come on, Google.
By the way, did you notice that he had all about Android written up on his whiteboard, crossed out all
Yes, I
about
did.
I was
YouTube
gonna
music?
say, I mean, I know it's
Pretty
like
awesome.
YouTube and Google and stuff, but I thought that was a shot at you guys. I was like, hey, I'm a little
thought it
defensive
was- I
about
thought
my
it was
buddies
great.
here.
I enjoyed that. I actually like that. It was a little swagger. I like it. But hey, I mean, I think it's good they're doing this event because like they I mean, it's clear that part of the whole coronavirus, thing was that, especially coming at it from my, kind of my line of work, is that everyone had plans and those plans got trashed, and everyone's been kind of, in the starting blocks waiting for when are we going to be able to do this? Like, yes, we're going to cancel this event coming up, but let's plan one in July or in August or whatever. And as this continues, we're realizing that we don't know when normal is going to be. So you have to make a decision. Do you continue holding on your plans or do you make do with what you've got? And I'm glad to see Google saying, no, let's do a virtual event. Let's do a live stream. Let's get the news out there and do it this way because they clearly have the technology. We just talked last week about Google Meet being upgraded, right? So that you can get more heads in the screen in Google Meet. So, good. I'm glad that they're finally doing this.
Yeah,
but
this is the wrong time to walk away and leave that power vacuum because Google should have the brand rep to be the solution we turn to.
Yes, totally.
For these types of situations. So it makes perfect sense that they start building that back up again. And like you were saying, not just even working with what you've got, showing that we are the preeminent solution for making sure you stay connected, you're up to date on your news, that your devices are getting supported. We don't want our customers and our consumers to feel like we've left them in their time of need.
But I think it's worth noting that this isn't a consumer-facing situation. This is a developer-facing situation. So this is more to keep things chugging along, despite the fact that I/O is kind of put off. I'm thinking about this in context of Apple is still hosting WWDC, and it's doing so in a virtual manner. That's a little bit, I think, bigger than maybe what Google's putting on, as far as I know. And of course, the whole bottom line of both of these events is to just keep the developers making things, keeping the platform alive, despite the fact that everything else has kind of been in a standstill.
I think it'll be interesting to watch.
Just like the show, just like all of that. Android.
Did everything freeze there for a second?
No, but nobody picked up after Flo started talking, so it was an awkward pause.
All right. I actually got dropped for a second. My internet.
That was my fault. I didn't unmute you. I was trying to call you back. Sorry, Florence.
Well,
it was a fake
I just
snub.
assumed it was my internet. What I was going to say is that it'll be interesting to see how they approach it. It's like basically the way I read this is we're getting the keynote. We're getting the Android 11 keynote that Dave Burke and Steph Cuthbertson were going to do on stage initially.
Sure. Yeah.
But we're also getting apparently some virtual talks after the fact on things like Jetpack and other aspects. So in some ways, it is kind of a mini I/O. This talk in and of itself is not I/O,
right.
But they're going, they have the technology, like you said. So they're going to do some webcasting on those topics as well, the way they would have done the presentations at Google I/O. They probably had so much of this work already planned anyway. It's kind of like, okay, well, why don't we have a day of these webcasts and give the developers kind of that extra info and get some attention around it and stuff. So it is like a mini I/O that everybody gets to go to.
It seems like the WWDC thing is going to be bigger than. They're not replicating I/O. It is just it's the keynote and then it's those breakout sessions and that's it. Whereas Apple's trying to keep the WWDC flame alive, which I'm glad they should. And they've had more time to prepare for it because the other thing I've learned is that putting on a virtual. Anything virtual with a large audience, the scale and the numbers and stuff like that, it is actually very hard. So
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
we'll say just real quick, DP4 features in the way of features on this last version. Not a whole lot to point out, so we don't really even just need to spend much time on it because it's just like buttoning up a few things here and there. There's like a wireless debugging quick setting tile, notification counts shown in preview. They removed the recent app dismissal undo gesture. If you remember, I think we talked about this last month. Kind of feels like last year. When you dismiss a recent app, you could swipe down and then it would come back. It's almost like you undo that dismissal, and they undid that. So there you go. Pretty minor features on this, but I'm really curious to see when they have this event, have they held on to some stuff about Android 11 that we have not seen yet to kind of give it. And I imagine they have. They usually hold on to one or two things to kind of reveal and be like, oh, by the way, here's a big new feature coming. Because so far what we've seen out of DP releases, there's not a whole lot to kind of point to be like, that's a marquee feature. So
although wouldn't this be kind of an okay year if Android 11 was really more of a refining year over Android 10, you know, like maybe that would help encourage more of these manufacturers to get on a more timely update schedule. We're not reinventing the wheel. It's not as big a jump as Android 9 to Android 10 was. I'd actually be kind of okay if this was just like, hey, let's really polish this up. Let's really support developers. Let's make sure these tools are as good as they can be, and give everyone a chance to catch up where people are probably holding onto their phones a little bit longer. Maybe this could be the push to try and encourage some of that longer term support.
Very good point. Yeah.
Everything's
Because we don't
change,
know.
y'all.
Hooray.
I know Ron mentioned going back to normal earlier, but I don't think there is. I think our normal is going to be different going forward.
It's going to be a new normal.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, we'll still need to send messages to one another. And if we've known anything, there's a segue for you. If we know anything about Google, and as evidence from our chat just now about YouTube Music, Google loves to have multiple teams working on the same thing. And then it seems like the tale of Google is merging those teams and getting on a unified path and moving forward. And it seems like finally messaging under Google might be heading towards that unified plan. Javier Soltero was hired last year as the VP general manager of G Suite, including Google Meet and Google Chat. And now he's also in charge of Messages, Duo, and the phone app for Android. So what that means is that all of Google Meet, Google Chat, Messages, Phone, Duo all live under the same umbrella under Javier's leadership, although he does say that there are no immediate plans to integrate across the apps. But, you know, clearly we saw the YouTube Music, Google Play Music migration was a multi-year plan that they started years ago. This could be the beginnings of getting Messages going in the right direction. Juan, do you have any confidence that Google will ever get messaging unified and correct? Or is it just going to be, is this like the worst rerun you've ever watched in the past 10 years?
My joke. Yeah, that's exactly it. My joke was like, do I dare to hope? Do I dare to dream? Because we really want that. We really want to have that synergy. We want messaging cohesion. We want to feel like there's an ecosystem. And it's definitely been one of the things we can point to on the iOS platform where there seems to have been a greater focus. And right now, my concern isn't even necessarily Google. I feel like these teams have been operating pretty well. We've been whittling away at some of these distractions, Allo, getting that out of the way. Duo, it seems to be gaining a little bit of traction amongst my family and friends. Like my grandmother is using it on her iPad. She doesn't seem to be too freaked out by Duo. So now it's, can we position this in a way where we can start changing consumer behavior and then also getting manufacturers and carriers on board? And that's going to be a really big hurdle for Google internationally. I mean, if we see them internally executing this well and with the team that's coordinating between all these different services, that's going to be a huge part of the puzzle. But do they have the ability to lobby appropriately with different regional governments? And can they convince carriers and manufacturers to make sure we're all speaking the same language? Because that's going to be the big advantage. We'll finally have competition against iMessage and FaceTime when all of these parts are working together and it's not all under Google's control.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Stretches outside of just this one person's purview, let's say, because that's a delicate, difficult challenge to meet. At the same time, like I feel at least somewhat hopeful that there is a single person that has it in mind to say, like at least now. At least now there's one person that can say, wow, we've got a whole lot of messaging efforts going on right now. Maybe we should think about that, versus all the different departments being like, we should add messaging to our product because they're doing it and it's working for them and they're doing it and they're all working independent. At least there's one person to be like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's a bad idea. I don't know how it's going to work though.
for once at Google, it's like the opposite of that XKCD comic, right? Where it's, like all these different teams at Google saying like, oh, well, there are 12 different ways we can do messaging. We should make a way to do messaging. And then you just end up with 13 different ways to do messaging. Now, hopefully we'll get like, well, there are 12 different ways to do messaging. Let's kill 6. And then we can finally start making some progress here.
Yeah. Did you guys start getting your Google Meet thing appearing in Gmail?
Yes. Yeah, it just happened yesterday. I think I started getting that. Yeah,
I used it this
flashbacks, doesn't it?
And it's so funny. It's so funny because I have so many of my personal, but like I have so many G Suite accounts because either I was in before you had to pay for it, or I've got other email. My email addresses are out of control. By the way, it's been a while since we tuned into to Ron and email, but currently now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Gmail accounts active, open at any given time. I use Shift, which I don't know if you've seen this. Is a great desktop email client that basically is just a mini browser, and you can load a Gmail window in each one, and then there's navigation on the side so you can jump between them. But so what's funny is that across all of those Google Gmail accounts is either they're a paid account or a free account or a public one or whatever, and I've been getting the Meet thing at different times, and so like I'll switch a tab and then all of a sudden like I'm like, oh, I just dismissed that, I already saw that, like I know this. So like every time they make a change to G Suite or introduce something, I see it 9 times, and it's tiring. So.
That is. You need to simplify, man.
I did simplify.
Like Google lists, you just got to whittle that down.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I don't want them all in one. I don't want to. I'm actually anti. We could do a whole show on email strategy, but I'm actually anti-unified inbox because I just feel like that's a source of confusion and So I don't know. Anyway,
that sounded like a great idea, but then in practice, like, actually, nope, don't want that. That was my case, anyways. Yeah. All right, Flo, you got the next one.
So we've got a couple more details on what we were sort of thinking about last week with regards to Android TV or Google TV or Android TV by Google, whatever it may or may not be called. So Protocol, which for those who are uninitiated is kind of this new publication coming through that covers the tech sphere. They had an exclusive with Google that about the forthcoming Android TV streaming dongle, the one that we sort of rumored about last week. So this would likely be Nest branded, which makes sense considering where all the smart devices are sort of headed from Google HQ. It would have a similar design to the Chromecast, but it would function more like a Roku or a Fire TV stick. So those of you who are used to that, basically a set-top box. There's a remote. You point the remote at the box, and then the box listens to what you tell it to do with the remote, rather than using your smartphone as the controller. So it will have a remote. You'll be able to install apps, and the remote will have integrated assistant for voice control, kind of the way Android TV does now, the set-top boxes. It will support casting. It will support Stadia, and it will be the first device running the new version of Android TV that we're hearing so much about. Now, I know last week's rumor about Android TV said that it would become Google TV, but there's no actual confirmation of this. It's just kind of hearsay at this point, but anything can happen after all. The original plan was to launch it this summer, but with the coronavirus, things have been quite delayed. So, it's possible later in the year or maybe even pushed to next year. But I imagine it would be later in the year just to kind of come in at that holiday time. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
I mean, I just want to know what took them so long to go this route.
Sales?
No, but I mean, after seeing the success of the Roku stick for so long, was it just really holding on to the ghost of Chromecast and saying that, and someone really believing that was the solution versus this sort of thing, or the success? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like this is a solution that is at least 4 or 5 years old that we should have already had.
It's older than that. This is a 7 to 8 year solution. Yeah. That's when Roku kind of came on the market. And now if you go to Walmart, you're going to see, well, you're not going to Walmart right now, but in the past, when you did go to Walmart, in Target, you would see Roku and Amazon Fire Sticks. I guess you didn't see Amazon Fire Sticks, but I digress. You saw other things besides Android TV. Android TV was always kind of you had to read the description of what you were looking at to know if it ran Android TV versus, a giant cardboard cutout. Android TV sold here kind of thing, the way Roku was. So,
although, I mean, like the last time I remember going to a Target, I made a point, it was a full display for Chromecast where they had Chromecasts lined out just like they did for Roku's. Huh. I don't know. It's kind of interesting that we can't break consumers of like the gaming console model, right? Like they want the faith of an interface that has a remote control. And so we need to have another remote control for our TV. I was full in. I really thought Chromecast was the way to go.
Me too.
You didn't have to do anything different than just operate your phone. But then I look at my family.
Anyway.
When I look at my family and they're all about Rokus and Fire TVs. And you're like, okay, so I guess consumers have spoken there.
Well,
Exactly.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem with the two problems of Chromecast were one was that the intellectual leap of, oh wait, I'm controlling what's on my TV with my phone was more than what average people could handle, right? I tried to walk my sister, I set up 2 Chromecasts in my sister's house, one in the basement, one in the living room, and showed like, okay, you take the app, you press this icon and then whatever. And it didn't stick. And then secondarily, as someone who it did stick with, who used Chromecast literally 4 years, it doesn't work. We talked about it, a while back. Before I got the NVIDIA Shield, it was so frustrating because the Chromecast connection via Wi-Fi to the TV, I timed it 29 minutes. 29 minutes, and then it's gone. And guess what? Watching HBO, that's an hour-long show. Right. And so then when Chromecast crashes or the app crashes, you need to reboot it. You need to restart it. You need to reconnect the Chromecast. It became so frustrating in an experience. So
I can't say
because we still have I've got a Chromecast here in the office and a Chromecast on our main TV. I can't say I've ever had issues like that, Ron.
Well, that must be nice for you because I've had them too.
Not to say that Chromecasts don't crash, but like, you pop the cable, you plug it back in and it's back up and running relatively quickly. And it's faster than something that has its own like GUI and operating system. And I've had pretty good experiences there.
It's not even the crashing. It's the losing the connection mid-show. Yeah. So when you go to pause, you have to reconnect the Chromecast, and then it restart. And part of that is the implementation, like the HBO app and things like that. Yeah.
I guess I'm just doing real well on my fancy mesh Wi-Fi where I don't have to worry about.
I have mesh too. Same thing.
No, what's so funny is that
it's more mesh.
I'm in such a small space. I don't even need mesh because I'm literally sitting 3 feet away from the router and 4 feet away from the TV. Because I'm in a 1-bedroom in New York City.
So right? Here's what I would hope to see from Android making.
And also, I had this problem in San Francisco on a different router, on a different provider. Like I troubleshot this with Patrick Norton. We looked at, I upgraded the router. We clear out the channels, all the stuff that you could do to ensure that connection was staying steady. 29 minutes, the connection would go away, and then I'd have to, you'd have to reconnect it, and it wouldn't work in multiple cities, multiple cable providers, multiple routers. I
don't know what to say to that, but with streaming off of Plex all day, every day with the TV right over there, I feel for you, man.
But that's a Plex thing because I haven't had problems with Plex either.
That's a great point.
Right, but that's still a connection to the Chromecast, right?
No, it's the app. That's what I figured out was it's the app. Yep. It's how the developer implemented the Chromecast spec, which you don't have consistency from developer to developer versus building an Android app that runs an Android TV that needs to do certain things and pass certain kind of.
It's not necessarily a Chromecast issue here. What we're looking at is Google working with their developers to make sure that they're actually implementing this stuff properly.
The API.
Yeah.
Because the reason why I'm excited to see what they might do with Android is, the same reason why I run a Nook connected to my TV, or there are times where I just need a full PC. It's the year 2020, and there are still times where I have a video file on my NAS that I want to stream, or some kind of funky connection, and these streaming sticks don't work. So I still have a full PC, a Core i3 PC connected to my TV for, a 4K MKV file with subtitles built in, and nothing plays that well except for a full PC. So I'll be curious to see if maybe that moves the needle on some of these other connection issues or the robustness of the player ability. But if we're going to look at a streaming future for gaming, and we're going to look at even higher quality content and the rise of 8K TVs, I guess the Chromecast just really wasn't going to get it done as a portal to our TVs through our phones. But I really liked the simplicity for the nerd core, who were cool with just it's on my phone, and now it's on my TV, and now I go about my day, and I don't want another remote.
And I'll be honest, it's funny because even though I have the NVIDIA Shield, I do every now and then Chromecast to it. Like there's some apps that I'm like, oh, it's easy. Let me just throw the Chromecast to it. So as long as we still have that option, completely unrelated question, but slightly related. So I saw as a YouTube TV customer or YouTube Premium customer, there's some Stadia offer. Should I get Stadia?
Yeah, why not? What else are you doing?
Sure.
You're not going anywhere.
You can try it,
except for
try it for free and see if you really want. You know what I mean?
But then I feel like I gotta get the controller, and I feel like is it a ladder purchase that happens?
But the controller is not that huge of a buy-in investment compared to buying a giant set-top box. As long as you already have the NVIDIA Shield, so you're already halfway there.
Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm. I would just say get the free. Do you have a controller from another console? No. Okay. Well, then I guess you would have to get that controller.
Jason,
it's not the end of the world to have.
Hey, wait. If by controller you mean a squeaky ball toy or a mini hammer and screwdriver set for toddlers, or stacky cups.
I mean at all.
I do have stacky cups. Wait, can I plug the stacky cups into the TV and play the video games?
Now, Ron, I don't mean to call you out here again, but when my daughter was born, I still had a PlayStation.
Oh man, no, no. Ooh. Juan, you got to come visit New York, and I'll show you what we're working under.
When we can travel again, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, exactly.
I probably find a solution to this.
No, this is a Ron problem. It's a Ron problem that I can solve. So, anyway, all right.
All right, let's take a break and thank the sponsor, and then we'll get into some hardware news. We're doing things a little out of order because of the interview. So we've got some hardware coming up. But this episode of All About Android is brought to you by LastPass. Your remote workforce is, of course, it's a vital part of your business, but it can also be a security risk. LastPass easily transitions from in-office to in-home with ease. Your IT team is still the gatekeeper in this scenario. LastPass enables IT to remain in complete control over which employees are accessing which resources, no matter where they're working. So you get unified visibility over access and authentication. LastPass ensures your employees have secure access to their work applications with SSO and password management. And LastPass offers an offline mode for both password management and multi-factor authentication, so your employees can gain access no matter where they might be. LastPass makes your team more productive and secure as well. It's easy for your team to collaborate with coworkers when they're working remotely. LastPass enables remote employees to securely share passwords across teams in order to stay on top of critical projects. And the average business has 185 shared folders. You might not have realized that. It's critical for businesses to consider implementing policies and tracking reports on shared password activity just so that they can ensure employees are operating securely. You get seamless collaboration with coworkers because it's essential when you're working remotely. With the current uptick in phishing attacks, you need LastPass. LastPass actually reduces the risk of phishing schemes by never autofilling passwords on suspicious websites. For remote employees accessing your corporate VPN, LastPass adds an additional layer of security directly to your VPN through biometric multi-factor authentication. We love LastPass. We rely on LastPass at Twit. I've been using it with a personal account for years. We also have it for as a company-wide solution as well. So it's just a great way to make sure that you're keeping secure with your passwords, creating unique passwords that you don't have to memorize or remember. And, as a result, you end up creating passwords that aren't going to protect you that well because they're too simple, that sort of stuff. LastPass protects against that and ensures that you're practicing good password health. And also, just as kind of a related note here, Twit and LastPass are actually presenting cybersecurity and identity trends unlocked with Leo, Steve Gibson, Andrew Keen, and Gerald Bushell. It's Thursday, May 14th at 1 p.m. Pacific. You can actually watch this as a live panel at twit.tv/live. And then, of course, afterwards, we're going to publish it as a Twit event in the Twit's events feed. They're going to discuss how the new decade is going to impact digital identity for businesses and individuals, plus a whole lot more. So make sure and watch that on May 14th at twit.tv/live. So now you know about that. As for LastPass, get simple security across every access point with LastPass. Just visit lastpass.com/twit, and you can find out how they can help your business and your employees stay productive and secure. That's LastPass.com/twit. And we thank LastPass for their continued support of Twit and all about Android. All right, Burke, I hope you have it ready because it's time for some hardware. Yeah. No. Maybe not. That's okay. Flo, you are up first. You've been using the Oppo Find X2. What you got to say about it?
I have been. And now I brought my 2-camera setup again today. So if you don't mind,
nice.
Before we get started, I would like to do a little intro, and then I'll switch the cameras in the Skype settings. And I'm.
Oh wait, do we have to vamp for you while you do this, right?
It should be quick. I got the settings open and everything, and everything is connected. So we'll see what happens, and if it doesn't work, then whatever.
So we're going to let Flo do that while she's switching cameras, and we'll vamp for a little bit. Juan, have you had a chance to play with
Wait, I'm not ready yet.
She's got to do her intro.
Yeah,
I thought that was the intro. Oh, okay.
Live production. Hi, everybody. Go. I'm Florence Ion, and this is my review of the Oppo Find X2 Pro. Now, I did introduce this phone to y'all about 2 weeks ago, kind of showed it off here on All About Android. I've been using it for the last 2-3 weeks. I plan on using it a little past this time because I'm really impressed with the hardware that we have here in hand. Now, I've been really curious about these phones from overseas. We're in America, and so normally when we're in the US, I should say. So normally when we talk about phones and All About Android, we're talking about stuff that is stuff. We're talking about stuff that is available stateside. But this time, this is a phone that's available only overseas, and I was very curious to just kind of like get my hands on it and also see how it compares to the OnePlus 8s. Now, those phones are cousins to this particular phone manufacturer. And though I haven't fully dived into those phones, I wanted to take some time with this first to kind of figure out what I was working with here. So I'm going to go through this review kind of spec by spec to make this a little easier to follow along. We're doing kind of learning some things from the LG review that I did about a month back. So we're going to switch cameras. No.
There we go.
Yeah, I'm seeing some hands.
Sorry, y'all. You got to give it a second. It's USB. I'm still learning how to use OBS to make this happen. So maybe next week. We're all learning right now, okay?
No, I was going to say we're all figuring this stuff out right now.
And look, I even left the plastic on so I can... I'm leaving it on, actually. I did this in my car for 12 years. I still haven't taken the plastic off on the foot rest. Anyway... So this is the Oppo Find X2 Pro. I showed it off to you. I showed off this really nice coral vegan leather that's on the back, super soft to the touch. Just to kind of quickly go through some of the specs here, this is a 6.7-inch UltraVision AMOLED display. It's really nice in person, and as you can see, it is kind of like edge to edge here. There's just a slight bit of bezel, and when I talk about the edges, you'll understand why. And we have the hole punch camera right over here. This is a quad HD plus resolution, 3168 by 1440 resolution with 120 hertz refresh rate. And, I tell you, I've been watching YouTube TV on this thing, been using apps. I've been looking through Depop, which is basically like so you can look at clothes. Everything is just so nice and smooth on it. Really like it. 12 gigs of RAM. You can definitely feel it as you're cycling through widgets, as you're cycling through apps. When you're doing that Chromecasting and you're doing it from this phone, feels a lot more fluid than when I'm doing it with my Pixel 3 for comparison. Inside, we have 512 gigs of storage. That's just perfectly enough so that you don't have to worry about running out of room effectively. We've got this kind of little side UI panel here. So this thing is running Android 10 and it's skinned with ColorOS 7.1. So over here, what you see is the Smart Assistant. And this Smart Assistant, let me try to get this on the camera. What it's showing over here is, Google I/O was supposed to happen today. In fact, today would have been the keynote. Boo-hoo. So this is just pulling in from my Google Calendar. We've got some quick functions, which you can edit yourself as you like. Currency converter. That's a good app name. Currency converter, recorder. We've got a step tracker, weather report in Celsius, of course, even though I don't really know what that means completely. And you can edit it as you like. It's a little different than the Google way of doing things on the Pixel launcher, but you know what? It's there. It helps. Other than that, I realize, by the way, this is upside down, and I'm really sorry. Again, learning as we go. I used some icons at the bottom. This is not what the interface looks like. This is kind of what the interface looks like here. So you can kind of see that there is an option to change the icons to have them all kind of match. The notification shade is its own sort of thing. It's a little different than what you used to on stock Android. I'm okay with it. I'm not super over the moon about it. I really like what I get with stock Android, and sometimes I get a little wary about when the quick settings look different than what I'm normally used to. But I can still use my apps that have little quick setting launchers, so to speak. So, you can still edit this and add what you want. There's other things that I really like about this phone. The fact that it has this really cool built-in relaxation app, which maybe for some people is like, Flo, why does this matter? Because listen, I'm stuck inside and sometimes there's a baby crying a lot. And when there's a baby crying a lot, you could just launch Oppo Relax right here, as you see. And you can use it to help you breathe. You can use it to put on some nice meditation music and fall to sleep. It's kind of, little touches I think is cute. It's cute. A couple other little things. There is a built-in recorder. There's a built-in gallery app. It's a little kind of different. This is just to show you the way an image would look on a screen, on this particular screen. Now see how it just kind of like takes up the entire thing. You just have the little hole punch over here. It's great, but when you're trying to use this edge over here, it can be really hard. I have long nails, so as you can imagine, when I'm getting in there with my nails, it can be kind of hard. But I've had folks reach out to me about, edge, there's an edge on that, not interested. And I think it's completely valid because sometimes it's just really hard to use a particular app. Maybe it's hard to pan, that sort of thing. Again, just your normal gallery app right here. A couple other things about this. Dolby Atmos stereo speakers. Music sounds really great on this thing. I've been using it with Pulsar, which I will talk about later today. You can just kind of tap in, listen to music, and it sounds really good. However, there is no headphone jack, which when we were talking about the V60 a couple weeks ago, that's going to be a bummer for some things. No Courage port. There is, however, IP68 water resistance on the Pro model. So if you're getting this one in, you will be able to take this into the shower. I mean, not into the shower, but at least you can keep it on the shelf. Maybe I shouldn't tell you to do that, but I am, because I do it. The other thing is the optical, in-display fingerprint. I don't like it. I never liked that in-display fingerprint situation. And I think it's because, I'm going to flip this phone around. And I think it's just because when we talk about usability for hands like mine that are sized like mine, this thing does not kind of work. You know, when you're in a rush and you're trying to like unlock your phone and you've got your baby in one hand or whatever else it is that you have, and you're trying to unlock your phone and get things started. It's really, really weird doing it with this. I can't remember which thumb I think I might have disabled it. Sorry, everyone. Not showing you a live demo. Whoopsie. Moving on to battery. Battery life on this thing is really great. Again, not as great as the V60, but we are working with a higher screen resolution here. It's a 4260 milliamp battery pack, 65 watt fast charging, which is pretty great when, you need your phone with you because you want to watch video on it, maybe. Now, here's the big kicker about this one is all these cameras on the back that we have here. So I'm going to read off the camera specs. And while I do that, Burke, if you wouldn't mind loading up that photos URL that I kind of popped into the dock last minute, which I do apologize. We're going to do a quick little walk through some of the photos I've taken with this, most of which happened indoors because of life as it is. So the rear camera has a 48 megapixel primary camera, 13 megapixel telephoto lens, and a 48 megapixel ultra wide camera, which I really appreciate because that means when you take those wide angle shots, you're not going to miss out on the screen resolution. Other little tidbits. So just, by the way, those of you looking at the video feed, we're looking at the box of the Find X2 Pro right now, just so you know what it looks like. 5 times optical zoom. What you're actually seeing right here is a zoom in of a blanket my father-in-law made my daughter, and it's very blurry. So just to kind of, bring it to perspective, here we've also got a 10 times hybrid zoom, by the way, and a 60 times digital zoom. So I'm going to walk you through that last part right now. So there's a little display in my room, some of my toys and things like that. Next slide, you're going to zoom in a little bit more. Okay, there we go. We're zooming into the light. We're going to zoom in a little bit more. Okay, cool. I can tell. Okay, keep zooming. We're zooming. Who's zooming whom? And here we go. We're zoomed all the way into to the light that I have. Now, maybe to you in the video feed, this doesn't look so blurry, but I'm going to tell you that when you look at it in real life, this is not a clear picture. And I'm still very dubious about this ability to just super zoom in on a phone camera. Maybe it's cool in some instances. Maybe you want it, but I am still looking for a real reason that I would want this besides maybe the occasional macro shot. So here we go. Just a couple more zooms just to kind of show you how photos are processed as you're zooming in, how much detail you can see. You can see some detail, but again, you can see on this one just how kind of blurry it is when you really get into that zoom in ability. Thank you, Brooke, by the way. This, I don't know if actually I'm supposed to have visual representation of a controlled substance, aka alcohol, on the show. But I did want to show you this backlight.
Okay.
Can we do that?
Just shut the whole thing down. I see how it is.
I'm sorry.
We've overstepped the line.
But I did want to show you the backlight ability. So this is a backlight because, again, you see how the window is behind the bottles and the pineapple. Normally you would have this be kind of like a dark photo in front of you, but this backlight ability that it does is pretty cool. I like that it kind of like adds that flash without you having to actually use the flash sort of thing. So really good camera. We're going to keep walking through this just to kind of show you. There are filters on this camera that I like to use. There's an AI mode, just like on the V60, that I think works really well. Burke, you can go ahead and just keep cycling. The photos that you see that have as you can see, I got a lot of alcohol this weekend, it being my birthday and Mother's Day. So if you see kind of this different color spectrum added to it, it's because, again, I'm using all the filters on it. I liked playing with it. I thought it was fun to have it built in kind of natively instead of having to churn it through an app. Now we're going to get, this is kind of a wide angle shot, a wide angle look. Again, I have a glass of wine in this. It was my birthday. Just, you know, some pulled pork. This photo is not so sharp. So I kind of just wanted to show what it's like when you have one of those, you know, middle of the line, like, is it sharp? Do I, you know, but is it like shareable? So I guess this would still be a shareable photo. And then just a couple more looks at the wide angle and how this processes in a night mode. I didn't think that its night mode was as good as what the Pixel 3 offers, or the Pixel 4 for that matter, but I thought it was still, you know, usable, and to the point that I would say when I'm reviewing a phone, if I'm immediately going back to the Pixel device to take that photo again to make sure that I have it, I took some selfies, which, by the way, that front-facing 32 megapixel sensor, really darn good. I was happy with what I got. You know, if I'm not going back to the Pixel to take photos, then the phone in my hand is doing a good job. That's sort of my benchmark for this sort of thing. So just to kind of button it up here, good things. Great design. ColorOS is okay, as I put in my notes. It's okay! Exclamation mark. 120 hertz display, which is smooth like butter, makes things smooth like butter. Water resistance, 65 watt charging, packed with great specs for those who are just into the idea of having that Qualcomm Snapdragon 865. I didn't mention it earlier. Battery life is good. Again, I wasn't as impressed as with the LG V60, but we are working with different screen resolutions. At the very least, I could keep this thing off the charger for a day and a half and not worry. I would come back to it. It'd be 25% versus a Pixel, which would have died on me. The cameras, again, didn't make me feel like picking up the Pixel. So, you know, I'm happy with the shots that I took, and I'm going to keep using it for video as well. Some of the downsides, no Courage port, as our good friend Mateo would call it. No wireless charging, which I know is kind of a big deal for some folks out there. Optical fingerprint scanner, it's there, but, you know, it's cool. I'm just subjectively not the biggest fan of that part. There's also no face unlock. So if you were looking forward to jumping in the future with us for there, you're not getting that with this phone. Also, it's kind of big. And again, this is my review, so we're talking about my hands that use this thing. And you can see, I mean, it's a lot to wield one-handed, I will say. I'm constantly using this phone with two hands. I don't feel comfortable with just one hand. And lastly, it's kind of expensive. I think the last time I mentioned, we were talking about 1,200 pounds, British pounds, which is quite a bit for a phone that is kind of, you know, going after the Samsung using flagship crowd. But the good news is that there's a lot there to really like about it. So if that's what you're kind of willing to spend the money on, this isn't a bad.
$1,471 US if you did the conversion.
Which
that's
you're not going to buy.
Phone.
I mean, you're not going to buy this phone if you live in the US, but for relative, just to, you know, a comparison, that's a lot of money for this phone compared to what you would get with the OnePlus 8. For $500 less, almost.
Well, right, but I mean, would you say Oppo is doing a decent job of targeting the Galaxy Ultra, though? You know, when we were looking at the telescoping camera sensor and stuff.
Absolutely, and I'm gonna let's see if this works. If I can switch back to my camera again. It takes a second. It's USB, everyone.
I was about to start humming like
go.
on hold music, but I didn't want to copyright strike your channel. You know, like Girl from Ipanema or something like that.
My experiment worked. I'm just so happy every time that works because I'm, you know, trying to figure out how to do this thing remotely. Anyway, I'm really happy to see that there is some real competition for Samsung out there. Too bad we're not going to get this in the US, but it's a good look at what could come. I still need these manufacturers to convince me on all those extra lenses, though. So we'll talk more about that in the coming weeks, because I am going to be using the OnePlus 8s. And if you're curious, kind of size, aesthetic comparison between this Oppo and the OnePlus 8s, you can actually go to my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/OhThatFlow. And I did a live stream about almost 2 weeks ago of this. And so you can kind of check it out there. More impressions coming soon.
Nice. Oppo Find X2
Pro.
Oh, I missed the Pro. My apologies.
Yes. Well, they're two different phones, so just want to.
Don't omit the Pro. It's all
Thank you, Bert.
There it is. There it is. Look at it. Thank you, Bert. Speaking of Pro, Juan, you have the TCL 10 Pro.
I was going to say from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the price spectrum, but they're both Pro phones, so pretty much the same.
Yeah, it's in the name, so it's the same, right?
So they're pros. I can't deliver as comprehensive a rundown on my experiences using this because it's still technically under review embargo. And we can talk about it and we can unbox it and we can share some early impressions. But the spreadsheet that I've got right over here full of benchmarks and scores and render tests and stuff, I can't share any of that with you just yet.
Okay. But what can you tell us?
Okay, tease.
But I mean, genuinely, I feel like this is for the Android enthusiast ecosystem, that this is going to be one of the more exciting phones to keep an eye on, whether or not you're going to jump on board or whether or not you're really going to recommend this to family and friends right out of the gate. I have been following TCL's manufacturing since the Alcatel days. I was a really big fan of the Idol 3 and the Idol 4. And then I was also a big BlackBerry nerd, too. And I thought their work with especially on the Key 2, was excellent hardware, good support. I liked what they brought to that collaboration. And I think this is, we haven't seen a move like this since the early days of HTC, where a company has moved out of the shadows of being an ODM and is putting their own label on a product and is making a pretty big play at a cost-conscious enthusiast space. This is with OnePlus going upscale, and I haven't heard word on like a ZTE in North America for 2020. They kind of came back a little slowly last year. We're looking for good options, good competition. iPhone SE $399. I'm expecting the Pixel 4a to be a great performer at $399. And here's something a little different at $450, rising just that little bit above those like base model mid-ranger or lesser expensive mid-ranger phones. And they're doing it in a really compelling way. Like, this is a pretty big statement phone for a manufacturer to be coming out the gate with, and for their first attempt or their first foray into a company branded product. TCL's been making some inroads with TVs. Now they've got a phone with their label on it. They're slapping their TV branding on this. You got their OLED, which is Netflix HDR10 certified. And like Flo was saying on the Oppo, a ton of camera sensors. So we were looking at OnePluses. This feels a lot like the love child of a Mate 10 Pro, if you remember that sort of horizontal stripe that the cameras used to live in on the Mate 10, and a OnePlus 8 for the general design language. It's funny how much of my impressions would mirror Flo's review of the Oppo. It's a big, tall phone. So if you wanted that small little Mighty Mouse device, for a less expensive device, I don't think this would be it. But we're looking at this opposite, like an iPhone SE, and it feels like a completely different tier of product just for that extra screen size. Same thing with the in-display fingerprint sensor. I'm not a fan. I think they don't make tech better. This is not an improvement over the rear fingerprint sensors or the dedicated buttons we had for fingerprint sensors. It requires you to pay more attention to what you're doing with the phone to do something as basic as unlocking it. And right now we're in a situation where if I'm out and about, I'm probably wearing some kind of face covering. So face unlock has become way less effective if I have to use my phone for, some mission critical communication when I'm out and about. But we're rocking a Snapdragon 675, so we're in that good mid-tier. Generally, without getting too specific, I've found performance to be surprisingly perky. I think that this is going to be absolutely adequate performance for a daily driver usage. And I'm meaning, and I'm also kind of pointing to that in some heavier lifting situations too. Like it can shoot 4K video. It's nice to know that a phone that can shoot 4K video can also edit 4K video when you're out and about, when you're out in the field. I always think this is kind of silly, like where app developers don't have a lot of confidence in lower powered devices, but we're starting to creep up. That 600 series chipset is now plenty capable of capturing content and giving you some tools to work with that content out in the field. This is going to be a happy return for a number of people, but we were talking about Courage ports and an IR blaster. So you can plug in headphones on a cable, and I can control the TV over here in my office, all from this one phone. And it's really nice. I like seeing that. I wish that wasn't just a poor person phone design. I wish rich people phones still had these kinds of features and accessories, but
I wonder why that decision was made too. I mean, because it seems like IR blaster is the kind of like who's like, how much space is that taking? How big is the phone now? You can't put that in.
Right. And we're in that same boat. I mean, this is a practically all screen device. There isn't some crazy, forehead bezel that we need to incorporate so that you can include a headphone jack at the top of the phone. The space argument has been disproven so many times that it's getting frustrating to see continued.
We need to free up room for the battery, Juan. That's the problem.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Ron. Because again, I've got an all-screen device here, which is relatively slim. It's coming in a smaller form factor than the big chunk, like an LG V60, and there's a 4,500 milliamp hour battery connected to a Snapdragon 675. Now, I'm not gonna shock anyone here. Well, I'm not gonna share you with my exact benchmarking of this, but that is phenomenally epic battery runtime. This phone lives for a long time on a single charge. I've had to revamp my testing protocol because one of my tests would be like streaming HD video for 30 minutes. It starts getting into margin of error territory whether or not 30 minutes of HD video streaming even shows up in battery drain on this phone. So I had to start widening my testing protocol just so I could see the graph move. It's really hard, like going back and forth between this phone and like the iPhone SE, like how much we take bigger, huger batteries for granted now. You need this kind of runtime, but they're coming at this really big with a lower powered chipset. And they're not pushing 5G, the 5G model, out to North America. So that's well covered, Ron. Battery life is well covered, and we still didn't sacrifice Courage port or IR blaster to get it.
I will say, I mean, you can sacrifice the Courage port. That's fine. Nobody needs a headphone jack anymore. But I will say,
that still really prefers having cabled headphones like we're all wearing right now.
Well, true, but anyway, because here or there. But
you're literally using a Courage port while you're talking about getting rid of Courage ports. I'm just saying.
Because I'll tell you why. Because I'm on a Mac laptop and I don't have the time or the energy to get my Pixel Buds to work with Bluetooth on a Mac.
From the company that removed Courage ports from phones, you're using their laptop with a Courage port because it's still a totally useful, unlicensed, open source, perfect audio standard for everybody to utilize at any price tier.
This is why Juan comes on the show.
The least expensive members of our society, all the way up into the most premium audiophile, is why this is still a beautiful thing to see. Is what you're saying.
It was invented in the 1800s, wasn't it? I believe.
And the late 1890s was the phono jack, but the 3.5 millimeter came
1956. 1956,
and,
I think, or 65, one of those dates.
With perfection. Yeah. You literally cannot do better than a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack.
There's no such thing as perfection in technology. It's Moore's law.
And it should still be on all devices.
I was going to say, though, about the IR blaster, I was actually in the field and I was trying to change a TV that we didn't have the remote. I was at an event before all this started. I was at an event and we had a TV that we borrowed and we couldn't change the input. And so I'm like, oh, wait, I'll download one of those remote apps and I'll figure it out. And I spent like 10 minutes setting up and I tried like 3 of the apps. And then I was like, wait a minute. And I looked up OnePlus 8, no, OnePlus 7 Pro. No, there's no IR blaster on this phone.
It's so sad.
I was convinced there was one.
It's really fascinating. I mean, when we see all these pieces and parts, I mean, you guys have been having a bunch of conversations in past episodes of the show, you know, the sort of exhaustion point. Consumers are holding on to phones longer. Internationally, I think North America is starting to catch up to the international market on the fatigue of monthly fees to own these $1,000 devices. And, the rest of the world, mid-rangers are grossly outselling the premium handset market. So to see all of the lifestyle features, the huge battery, still having a headphone jack, the IR blaster. Oh, and I didn't even get to the quad camera array. So we're not even sacrificing on the camera array. The main shooter on the TCL 10 Pro is nearly identical hardware to what's on the LG V60. The LG V60 is still going to hold a lead for the brute force processing power, the AI capabilities of that Snapdragon 865, and LG's phenomenal camera app. But hardware to hardware, I shared like 3 photos. I did a back and forth, from 2 different phones, and I didn't tell people what the phones were. And no one was guessing that there was a $300 price difference between these 2 smartphones. Literally, it was conversations about minute color processing, or I don't like this HDR tone, or the bokeh is a little bit sharper defined on this one phone, so that's probably the iPhone and I hate it. Literally, you would not have put these 2 phones in your brain for a back and forth photo comparison like that. And here we've got, that kind of quad bin 16 megapixel still output. It's a 64 megapixel quad bearer array. I mean, like, we're not really hurting for much. And the phone doesn't stutter or twitch much, except for, of course, like super graphics intense gaming. I feel like this is going to be a big commentary. Google helped kick this door open last year with the Pixel 3a. Apple made sure to, there was a clear shot at the mid-ranger market with the iPhone SE, and we're going to have a few more players creeping up into the space. And I feel like this is the big disruption point. This is going to be the big wedge where players are, this part of the market is going to get insanely competitive for North America, where the rest of the world had already figured this out. We're finally catching up.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you. I think there's definitely a move towards the mid-range, and it's been great to see it move, and it's been great to see Google embrace it with the A line. Now Apple embrace it, which, by the way, update on my world, my wife's iPhone SE has been ordered and it will be arriving next week. So I'll play with it and I'll come back and give you guys my thoughts, even though we're not all about iPhones. But still,
it's a cool little phone. I mean, again, I'm mostly in the Android camp, but I still try and keep abreast of what's happening in iOS. That's exciting competition. Apple offers $399, and it's kind of a massive engine in a sleeper Toyota Corolla, tiny gas tank, super hot, super fast engine, screen that you probably really don't want to game on or watch a lot of content on, but it's going to be a good one-thumb communication device and hopefully gets great update support because Apple's kind of known for that. Now we're going to have other options. The Pixel's going to be kind of an in-betweener. The TCL is actually going to be a pretty baller multimedia device at a price that's still in that same tier. And then, we've got an option now that starts off with 128 gigabytes of storage and you can throw a memory card into. We're not giving up on some of these features just because Apple, Google, and Samsung are pulling that stuff out of their phones. We're getting these opportunities, and there's room for new players to come up and try and disrupt, especially for those of us who are really into having these types of features.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. Okay.
Cool.
So, and you do not have an official review of this yet, but it's coming soon.
Yeah, the embargo date's going to lift in a couple days. So I mean, you're going to see the YouTube's flood with TCL 10 Pro versus iPhone SE and TCL 10 Pro versus 10L.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's going to hit all at once. But yeah, I'm going to have some benchmarks out. I'm going to have an audio review for my Patreon. I'm excited that I get to do an actual headphone audio review on a phone, because usually that's only for LGs these days. There's going to be a lot of coverage to talk about, and there's also just the philosophy, the excitement of seeing a new player brand label this and come up in this space where HTC isn't a player anymore. You know, like I miss those three letters being on phones. And if TCL can give me some of that vibe back, then I'm going to be happy to see a player in this space.
Thank God it's a company with three letters in there.
We need one.
It's funny though, because you mentioned how TCL has been breaking through, and I did, for the first time last week, I actually saw a TCL TV box on the sidewalk waiting in the garbage pickup, and I'm like, oh man, they're starting to get in homes. They're doing it. So that's pretty. Yeah. It's an interesting indicator. Definitely following in LG's footsteps in that regard, and that's actually a great segue to our last bit of hardware news, which is LG. Great company, great phone manufacturer. We've seen a lot of great phones. We've talked about them winding down certain models and what are they going to do next? Well, it looks like LG said, forget about foldables. Our new focus of innovation is going to be rotating screens. This device is codenamed Wing. And it's got a 6.8-inch display similar to the LG Velvet, and you rotate it to reveal a secondary 4-inch 1x1 display underneath it. Which I got to tell you, this reminds me of the. I feel like every year or so I bring up my old Sony PDA, the Clie or whatever it was, that had that looked like a Star Trek communicator, but then the top one could rotate or could whatever. So this is what it reminded me of. But so it's a 2-display device. It's got support for 5G and a 64 megapixel camera in the main the main one, and it's expected to launch in the second half of the year. So hey, LG, bring it on, bring on the crazy. I love it. I don't know what do you guys think of the rotating phone? Do you think that this is the aha moment that we didn't think we needed?
No, I'm not certain that this is the aha moment. But then
yeah.
But then, I mean, I'm getting a familiar feeling looking at this going, what in the hell am I looking at that I got with foldables? And foldables have at least in some ways justified their experience, their existence. This, though, I'm really puzzled. I'm like, but I don't understand why. But I guess I didn't, as much with foldables either. I don't know what to think about this one, to be honest. It almost looks like it could be fake, but.
Well, and from this article, I'm kind of disappointed that they didn't show the LG that actually did used to flip out this way. It was in the first Iron Man film. Tony Stark's futuristic looking phone was in LG, where the screen would flip out and you would have a T9 under the display, and the display would be landscape. So LG has a major problem, right? I actually just posted, someone just posted on my little subreddit, their experiences as a retail rep in selling consumer electronics and talking to customers about phones. And LG's problem, no one's going to see on an LG if they do 90 hertz refresh. And that tiny little corner of a smartphone carrier store that's got dust all over it that no one ever walks by. But if someone walks by, their Samsung kiosk and the Apple kiosk, and they notice this weird T-shaped phone off on the other side of the store, maybe that perks some curiosity. If they see a phone with 2 displays and it opens up like a book, maybe that might catch someone's attention. And to Ron's point, I mean, like, if LG's going to start clawing their way back into the public conscious, especially here in North America, you've got to throw out some crazy experiments. I agree with the sort of track that they're on. Dual screen has been super fun to play with. It's awesome for gaming. It's great for multitasking. I'm not sure. It's really going to depend on what LG's software does, what the UI does to the second display. But there are some ideas, like having a Game Boy style gaming experience on that tiny screen, and then you've got the landscape screen that's all for the game. You don't have your hands blocking the screen, or we're all so used to typing in portrait. I can understand where on these super, super long, wide devices, typing in landscape isn't as nice as when phone screens were smaller. Okay, well, you can mitigate that. You can use this kind of a form factor to change that. But we're still going to need to see where LG refines the UI, cleans up, and gives us some of this multitasking and productivity flexibility to really engage with it. They're on the right track. I think this is a better track for LG. They can keep costs lower. Their experiments won't be as expensive as folding phone experiments are going to be. They're probably going to end up being as durable or more durable if consumers are trying to use something like this long term. But the major problem with LG consistently has been and probably will be for the foreseeable future is telling consumers that these products exist, is getting out in front of them and leading the conversation and not letting the YouTube popularity algorithms of their products dictate whether or not they're successful. And that's a trend that it doesn't matter what crazy experiment they put out there. I don't see that changing in 2020, which is unfortunate.
Some harsh words for LG. Wow.
Oh, I mean, like even since my days at Pocket now, I've had so many conference calls with LG PR, just like grassroots efforts. Right now, if you go to the LG forums and you click on smartphones, the phone that's on their banner is a G6. I mean, like, I don't feel like that's a TV commercial, spend a ton of money on ads. That's your main corporate brand. Yeah. Just not even keeping abreast of what's current with their own product offerings. And that I think does trickle down to consumers where maybe they're not aware of that, but they don't feel like LG is being the advocate for their own products. And this is coming from someone who genuinely depends on LG products for working out in the field. I mean, they are my top pick for phones because of their feature sets and because of what they allow me to achieve when I'm trying to work remote. I want them to talk about their products in the way that I share my experiences about their products. And I feel like you need to lead that conversation. Motorola, issues with leading that conversation. Sony in North America, no leading of that conversation. You're not going to chip away at, Samsung, Apple, or the growth of OnePlus without a good grassroots game, putting boots on the ground, and having some kind of general advertising for regular consumers to know that you exist still.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. And this coming from the founder of the LG fan club. All right. No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally just kidding. I love your perspective on LG because I don't know that many people in my circle, let's say, that are as dedicated to the LG brand as you are. So that's one of the reasons I love getting you on the show, Juan, because you can always tell us what's going on with LG. And we appreciate that. Let's take a break. Thank the sponsor, and then we'll get into the arena. I'm realizing we've gone a little long today, so we're going to speed through. It's going to be arena speed round. But first, this episode of All About Android is brought to you by Mint Mobile. I actually use Mint Mobile. I've been using Mint Mobile for quite a while now. Before Mint Mobile, I was using the big wireless carriers, as many of us here in the U.S. Do. T-Mobile. I was going to say Sprint, but they're kind of no more at this point. But you got Verizon, AT&T. When I was on Verizon, huge monthly bills in particular. But of course, Mint Mobile has come along, and they've kind of made the whole pricing structure for mobile phones, for me anyways. They've kind of erased what I thought and replaced it with something a whole lot better. Mint Mobile allowed me to essentially save an insane amount of money by comparison because everything's online. They're doing things online. They don't have to, cover the cost of a store and all of that heavy overhead. You can cut your bill down to just $15 a month. You could save hundreds of dollars in the process for anyone who's looking to save without sacrificing service. And that last part is very important. You don't want your service to suffer as a result of it. You're not going to get that with Mint Mobile. You get the same service you're used to, and you're paying just $15 a month. Premium wireless service for just $15 a month. In fact, you can go online only. Like I said, that eliminates completely the cost of retail. so that Mint Mobile can pass that savings on to you. Every plan comes with unlimited nationwide talk and text, with as well 4G LTE. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone number along with your existing contacts. And you can switch now to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless for $15 a month. And if you're not 100% satisfied, Mint Mobile has you covered. They have a 7-day money-back guarantee. I, of course, ported my number over to Mint Mobile, and I've not noticed the difference. That's, I get the same speeds that I was used to. It's the same number, so nobody had to change the number that they were calling or texting in order to reach me. It just works. So to get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month with their 3-month introductory plan and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/Android. That is mintmobile.com/Android. That's where you can go, and you'll cut your wireless bill to $15 a month. mintmobile.com/Android. All right. We've got a whole lot of apps and not a whole lot of time. So let's jump into the arena.
So many enter, but only one lives. Android Arena.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so looking at last week's arena, it appears that Super Status Bar, I had a feeling on that one, 37% of the votes.
It's right there in the name. I mean,
it's super.
It's super. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super. So, it's going to happen. 37% of the votes. I believe that was Team Guest, right?
Yep. It was. Yep.
Second place, Flow, your scrambled EXIF app, got 30% of the votes.
Nobody wants their location data out there.
Nope, that's true. Third place, Ron, your calculator lock app, which I thought was hilarious. You got 17% of the votes. And fourth place, I mean, mine was maybe a little too safe. I mean, it was Adobe Premiere, so it wasn't going to wow anybody.
It's that's the tough thing about Adobe Premiere is that nobody really gets excited about Adobe Premiere.
Totally.
So, but it's very functional. It's a great tool. Don't get me wrong. I use it a lot. I mean, I use it, on the regular, but I don't get excited when I click that icon.
I think I won an arena with Power Director though, with video editing.
Yes, you did.
So
yeah, you did.
It's funny to see Adobe come in dead last.
Yeah.
Well, it was Super Status Bar. I mean, it's super right there in the name. So with those results, though, Jason, despite coming in last, you are, after 18 weeks of the arena, you are holding on to first place with 46 points. But Flo is right behind you by 1 point with 45 points. I am sneaking up in third place with 40 points, so I'm only 5 points away from tie in second. And guests are in last with 36 points. So Juan, you got a lot of shoes to fill here. You got to, so.
No, I got to bring it.
So that said, Jason,
what are you doing, Juan? Jeez,
come on, man. So, Jason, with that last place result, that means you get to go first. Then I will follow you. Then Juan, and then Flo will take us home.
All right, sounds good. I will dive right in. So the app that I'm featuring, it's called Dolby On, and I'm sure you've heard of Dolby, the noise reduction kind of algorithm company, blah, blah, blah. I think I even saw on Twitter today I saw someone tweet maybe to you, Juan, about Dolby, cracking a joke, something along those lines that you wouldn't like Dolby. And I was like, wait a minute, how did this person know that I'm bringing this into the arena? I think it had something to do with something else. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Dolby On is a tool for musicians. Although I realize anyone could use it. You don't have to be a musician in order to use this. But essentially what it is, what it's been designed to do is be a tool for musicians to be able to quickly record ideas or record the music that they're working on in that moment, and to apply some of Dolby's kind of post-processing smarts to it. So they've got their algorithm baked into the app, and it just has a number of tools in there that I find in my playing around with it, I'm actually really impressed by the quality of it. So I recorded a little kind of walkthrough here. Burke, you can just hit play on that, so it'll walk through as I'm talking through it. But essentially, the interface is really easy to use, right? You jump right in, you tap that record button, and at first it analyzes the noise in the room. So you have to be very silent. and you allow kind of its algorithm to kind of take a noise print is what it's doing. And it's going to use that later. Now, right here, I'm recording something. You can't hear that because it was through the mic. And what I did is I actually brought my electric guitar upstairs, but I didn't plug it in. So I opened the window, had it really noisy, had the fan going on in the other room, and my electric guitar, but not plugged in. So electric guitars, when they're not plugged in, they're actually pretty quiet. But when it applies its algorithm, if you turn up the volume here and maybe skip back and play the beginning of that, Burke, it basically applies the noise print. And it has all of its own processing. So it has like a compression algorithm in there, does all this other stuff, and you can control all this stuff. So essentially what it does is it takes this like really quiet, like electric guitar strumming. Okay. It almost makes it so that's with it off. And then it turns it back on. So it's essentially meant to be kind of like a quick, easy to use, like I've got an idea, throw it down and record it. And often like I've used something like Evernote or just a regular audio recorder. And if I'm just picking up an electric guitar and I try and do this, I don't know, everything sounds super quiet. I have to turn it up really loud. It just doesn't sound very good. And this is just one easy way for me to do it and not have to fiddle with things. Just drop down an idea and move along. And like I said, down what you can see right now are just different kind of like preset options for adding a little bit more compression, maybe reducing more noise from the environment, or you can turn it off and kind of see the before and after. And they include some tracks that were fully recorded with this, with like a band in the room and everything, to kind of get a sense of what it sounds like before and after. So I don't know, audio purists, they feel one way or the other when it comes to Dolby noise reduction, and I've sat on both sides of that camp. In the case of this app, I really like what they're doing, and I think it's pretty impressive what they're able to pull off. So it's called Dolby On. Do a search for Dolby in the Play Store, and you'll find it, and it's free and just easy to share it out from there. And it supports lossless audio, so if that's important to you, you can record it uncompressed and all that stuff. Dolby On is the name of the app. Check it out. All right, Ron, you got the next one.
I do have the next one. And Burke, I gave you the link so you can see my screen. I'm currently streaming my screen to the internet. Maybe that'll work. But while Burke is looking at that, I will explain that my app, and I feel like I've used this as a justification for apps in the arena before, but phones are very big. They're getting bigger and bigger every time they get released. And those of us with hands and fingers, it gets very hard to reach the far corners of your phone because it's just so big. And there also might be a subset of users who've been like, I really wish I could control my phone like a trackpad. And now you can with this app, which is called Quick Cursor One Hand Mouse Pointer. And it's an early access app. It just hit the Play Store. You can still install it and check it out, though. And basically what it allows you to do is allows you to if I swipe in from the bottom lower third of my phone, you will see, and you might need to zoom in. Do you see over the icon? You see that little target? That is higher up. Scroll up. So that big bubble at the bottom is my finger controlling it, and I'm controlling that little circle right there. And that is your mouse cursor. So then I can just hover over this and launch an app by tapping there. So if you zoom out there, Burke, you can see. So basically, here I'm in the Quick Cursor app settings, and so you can swipe left in from the left or right margin of your phone to enable the trackpad area. And then what you get is you get this little cursor target up in the upper part, and that's where you can control your phone, and you can go pretty far around, getting anywhere, and then you just tap with the cursor. That's literally all it does. So the settings are really cool. You can basically you can adjust where the trigger area is, if it's on the left side or the right side or both. You can change the swipe mode from simple margins to advanced margins, and then you can also change it to a floating tracker, which is interesting as well too. But you got to unlock the Pro version, which you get to support your dev, which is, I'll tell you how much that is. I haven't done it yet though. $2.49. So for $2.50, you can support your dev. But you can customize the swipe zone. You can change what the cursor looks like. So if you want to, have a red cursor or a gray or black one or that sort of thing, and these are all things that you can unlock with the pro version. And you can also customize the way the tracker looks. But you don't need to pay for the dev. It all works just in the free version. And then of course you can change what the actions do on the edges as well with the pro version. And then what I think is key here is that when the keyboard is visible, you can choose to either turn the triggers off or keep or disable them, because you don't want to have a mouse control pop up when you're swiping with the keyboard. But yeah, so basically it's just give yourself a mouse controller on your phone. Pretty cool, huh?
Quick cursor.
Yes, free in the Google Play Store. Check it out. $2.50. Support your devs.
Mouse pointer. There you go. Love it. Good solution for those gigantic phones we all have nowadays. One, I have. We'll see. I have your app.
Actually, I think I can screen share this if you guys want to give it a try.
Oh yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Okay. We're gonna try this. We're doing it live here, people. We're doing it live.
Oh, he's plugging it in.
Doing everything live. Nice.
Boom. All right, this is my insane app list. I have had the hardest time trying to find fun games that you can kind of, play with other people, casual time waster games, that don't savage you with microtransactions and ads and interrupt gameplay. And I love word games. I'm terrible at Scrabble, but I love to play it. But my all-time favorite game is Boggle. And Boggle is you get this grid and you draw lines to make different words, over 3 letters, as many words as you can. Just Boggle. This is the name of the app. And it's really just Boggle. The developer here is making a wonderful little app. It's beautifully coded, super simple interface. You can play by yourself if you just want to solo this, or you can play against other people. And there are no ads. There's no interruption. It's not like Wordament where you have rounds and you have to wait for a round to finish and then you can jump in, but you're not really playing against someone Just Boggle is the best version of this that I've been able to find, and it's totally free. So no microtransactions, no paywalls. You just go. So I've got this queued up on my screen right here. And this is the one thing that I really, really like is at the top, you can click this little person icon and you get this 6-letter code. And you give this 6-letter code to someone you want to play against, and they've got the game installed on their phone. And as long as you're on the same code, then you're playing the exact same board for Boggle. So you click the little timer, and you get these letters, and you try to make as many words as you can. I probably shouldn't really play this while I'm trying to talk about this, because that would be lame. Ha ha! See right there, that's a word that's going to give me some points, and it's great. I mean, so I did a stream where I was playing this with some of the people on my Discord, and every round, you just fire it up and you'd compare scores and we'd have a really good time. So if you're a fan of games like Scrabble, but then again, Boggle, Wordament, there are a couple others like Boggle with Friends and Word Shaker. I'm going to switch back to my main camera here. It's really tough to beat free, and this is like I said, this is the best version of this that I've seen. The developer has been really active. If you go through and read their reviews, this app is kind of blown up a little recently, and they're just like so sweet and replying to like every single review that people are leaving. They've recently just added a bunch of feature updates and a UI refresh because people were asking them just to switch it up. And I mean, they're not making any money on it. They're just doing it because they wanted to put a good game out there. So casual time waster and a fun one to play with other people, especially some couch competition. My wife and I are playing this all the time. We'll be streaming something on Netflix, and then they'll be like, "You want to play a couple rounds of Boggle? Let's play a couple rounds of Boggle." And it's kind of like our nighttime routine now. So this is a happy one to share.
That's great.
And again, like Ron is saying,
I love Boggle.
Again,
yeah,
it's so much fun, and you're not in for a huge commitment. I can't get my wife to play Settlers of Catan with me because that's going to take all night. But, Deep Sea Adventure and Boggle, man, we can go a couple rounds, get a good little gaming fix, and we're good to go. And I just love shouting out developers that are putting out great work and then not breaking their app to find ways to monetize it. So, I want to shout out Never Ads. This developer made a great game, and I think they deserve some kudos for it.
Yeah. Right on. Just Boggle.
And that's all it is.
After all, just
Boggle.
That's all it is.
You got to appreciate the simplicity of it.
Well, what's funny is they had to change the name recently. That's in their recent updates, is because the name was Boggle. And apparently Google sent them a message saying like, hey, your metadata, the name of the app, it's too simple. You need to add something. And so they added
sue you
just.
soon.
Yeah, right.
So now it's
For
just
whoever
Boggle
is
is
the-
the name of the app.
Just saying. Just Boggle. Right on. Good pick. All right, Flo, what you got?
I put a pen behind my ear just in case anybody's curious. I'm also doing a screen share. Burke, so if you wouldn't mind just logging onto that link, we're going to make this quick, I promise. I just want to get some visual out there for you before we hop on to the arena and waiting for.
No, I'm still seeing dark. Oh, there we
All
go.
right,
Okay.
really quick. Let's do this. So I brought Pulsar Music Player to the arena. Now, I already brought a playing app a couple of episodes ago, but that one didn't have all of the features that you probably want from a music player. So this is what I'm bringing, because this one not only has casting abilities so that you can cast anywhere to your house from this app, any locally stored music that you have on your phone, you play it and then you cast it, and it's great. It's perfect. It's wonderful. Look at all that. I can cast to any of these things in my house. Yay, it's all locally stored music. And if I want, I can log on to Android Auto, and this thing will work too. You can actually control it through Android Auto. And wait, there's more. One other little tidbit that makes this thing so great is that I think this is only, how many megabytes? This is like 4.3 megabytes. This app is so light. You can install it anywhere and it will do the deed for you. So this is a music app. It's called Pulsar. It's for locally stored music. And I think this is a better music app than the one I brought to the arena a couple of episodes ago. And you need to know about it because of those aforementioned features.
Boom.
There you go.
On Google,
Interesting.
On YouTube Music Interview Day, no less, says someone in chat.
Yeah, I thought it would be relevant
JJ in chat.
for those people who are switching over. And I found this one after I found the other one. And I was like, oh, this has casting and Android Auto support, which are like the two things I rely on. So
There you go.
there you go.
There you go. Pulsar. Yes, I've heard of Pulsar. Good pick. All right, so go to twit.to/AAA poll 472 to place your vote for your favorite app this week. Is it Dolby On, Quick Cursor, Just Boggle, or Pulsar? Twit.to/AAA poll 472 and place your vote like Burke is about to do, I think. And maybe. Oh, that was so close. Quick Cursor gets Burke's vote. Is that your vote
It's
too?
a novelty app, but that always seems to hit.
It works for Burke. Does it work for you? All right, we've reached the end. Oh boy, this was a long episode. Thank you for sticking out to the very end. And Juan, thank you for joining us and sticking out to the very end as well. It would have been weird if suddenly you weren't there anymore. So thank you for sticking around.
Like, I'm out of here. Peace.
So somegadgetguy.com. What do you want people to know?
I mean, we've got a lot of stuff coming up, wrapping up longer term looks at the OnePlus's 8. The embargo on that TCL is going to be lifting soon-ish. I'm going to be doing some iPhone SE kind of cross-platform comparisons. I've got a bunch of audio tech that's going to be coming out, some new wired and wireless earbud and headphone solutions. I just recently did a look back. Oh, you're actually showing it. I just did a look back at the focals, something we talked about on the show a while back, and how a heads-up display built into glasses is really handy when we're, not supposed to be messing with our phones in public and touching our faces and stuff, that this is actually a really interesting product to come back to. And then for Newegg, we're going to be doing some maker and STEM tech, especially for kids. So I just recently wrapped up shooting some videos with my daughter. We didn't put her on camera that much. It's mostly just little girl hands. But looking at some maker kits, some toy kits that look really familiar, magnetic racetracks and stuff like that. So that's going to be going up over on Newegg. So lots of stuff. There's just lots of conversations. And if you wouldn't mind me being schmaltzy for just a second, because this is something that I've been doing on my podcast, and I'm sure your community is similar to mine. With everything that's going on in the world today, I'm sure that you listening to this and you watching this, you're probably the person in your circle of family and friends who normally gives out the tech advice. People probably ask you about phones and computers and tablets and stuff. And you've probably been getting leaned on pretty hard because everyone's leaning on tech like we've never leaned on tech before. So, from one podcast host piggybacking on another podcast, thank you for being a good tech neighbor. And thank you for being a good tech citizen, because you probably haven't been thanked enough for being a good resource for your family and friends.
Aw. Juan, you're going to make me get all misty-eyed.
Why we have Juan on the
Dusty
show?
in there, Ron? Yeah.
He's the best.
Thank you, Juan. That was great. Excellent. Somegadgetguy.com to follow everything that Juan is up to. Flo, what's going on in your home? I was going to say your neck of the woods, but that is home.
Well, my
really.
home, I've had a baby crying for the last 10 minutes, so that's been fun.
Yeah. Okay.
But you can't hear it. FlorenceIon.com is my website. That's the Flow feed. I've got a podcast I keep saying I'm going to work on. Get into it. I've got reviews I'm working on. I'm working over here. So you'll see more stuff from me in the future. FlorenceIon.com. That's my website. Don't wear it out.
All right. Thank you, Flo, and happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
You bet. And what about you, Ron?
Yes, happy belated birthday, my birthday sister, Flo.
Yeah.
Anything I say just seems really silly after Juan, came out with that. So I just hope everybody's just being safe and taking care of one another and just being cool. But you could follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at RonXO. And if you want to hear me talk a little more, you could always go over to ifanboy.com, my old comic book buddies there, where I join them in the latter half of their show to talk about old 1980s G.I. Joe cartoons. So that's what I'm doing to pass the time during this stuff. So, yeah, fun times.
Thank you, Ron, and happy birthday to you as well.
Thank you. It was a lovely, but Flo and I mean, I don't want to speak for Flo, but I had a lovely, this past Saturday was our collective birthday. And Flo, I did want to ask you, isn't the birthday, well, your bean is a little small, but the birthday's even that much more special with having little ones to help you celebrate it. So next year will be even more fun for you, Flo.
She was a PETA on Saturday.
Yeah.
Not in a good mood, and I think it's because she knew it was my birthday.
Yeah, she wanted the attention.
So
it's funny you say that because mine were angels on Saturday, and then let's say Mother's Day was a little touch and go. So I felt bad. Yeah, but
yeah, I can understand that. Thanks to Burke in the studio for everything that you have done today. You've really worked hard today, Burke. You always do, but especially today, and we appreciate that. Also, big thanks to Victor, who is helping out on the edit and in here producing and everything. And also, happy birthday to Victor. He had his birthday as well. So
when was his birthday?
I know. I think his birthday, was it on Sunday? I don't think it's the same day as yours, but I think it's right around it. And I didn't know that.
Did we know that Victor's birthday was
Victor,
the day? Did we know
we've
that?
talked about our birthdays for how many years? You've never mentioned any of this.
Yesterday. It was yesterday. So his
and I know
birthday
you
is
see me
yesterday.
doing this.
So there you go. 3 All About Androiders.
It's the 11th. It was yesterday.
Yeah, it was yesterday.
Happy belated birthday, Victor. We're never going to forget now.
I know, right? Now that we know. As for me, twit.tv/hot90, HOT90. You'll find my full review of the Pixel Buds from here in my home studio in the corner of my bedroom. I think it turned out really well. It's an exhaustive interview. It's almost 20 minutes. But after today's episode of All About Android, I'm sure you can believe that. That is it for this week. We love you guys. We appreciate you watching and listening each and every week. Go to twit.tv/AAA. That is the show page where you can find all the ways to subscribe in audio and video formats. There's also links out to YouTube, so you can subscribe and watch there. Do your YouTube things, like hit that bell and all that sort of stuff. But that's it. We've reached the end. Let's close this out and see you next week on another episode of All About Android. Bye, everybody.
Hey folks, I am Micah Sargent, co-host of Tech News Weekly right here on the Twit Network. Yes, Tech News Weekly is a show we do every week, Jason Howell and myself, where we talk to people who are making and a breaking the tech news. That's right, it's journalists, it's inventors, it's app makers, it's everybody who's bringing the tech news in a given week. It's all the stuff you want to know about in bite-sized chunks in a fantastic package. So be sure to subscribe. It's twit.tv/TNW.